Good afternoon and welcome to Lunchtime Series with me, Kevin Britz, leading the charge with insights, information, and ultimately effective results. Joining me today is marketing and leadership segment, marketing and communications expert and co-host Craig Pagely. How are you doing, Craig?
Yeah, Kevin, good to be chatting again. Thanks. And it was great that we got to connect in person last week after our show and just to chat about some of the greater insights into how you got into the journey of leadership and coaching and training with Sean, you and I.
Yeah, it is. I always find it quite fascinating, and what I've sort of noticed with this journey, even with the branding of the rebranding that I'm currently going through, is that it's such a unique profile. It's
Yes.
From stage performance to voice artistry to having a business to having a lunchtime series, being a published author, and like all of the knock-on effects that it's had. It's been such an amazing journey. So I recognize it like that. Yeah.
But there's an interesting little connector there because, obviously you use the word voice, and what you're doing is in terms of the actual professional delivery is enabling other people to have their own voice.
Well, yeah. It has the nuances of going, this is something I've done all my life. And just because I've applied and actioned it, it means, I'm a good example of what, average Joe can do and achieve. So if I can do it, anyone can do it. So
Brilliant.
It's a beautiful kind of, when you know the whole story, it's a really nice story.
Perfect.
Craigie, so as we start, can you give us give our listeners a quick recap on the week's topics?
Yeah, Kevin, last week, thanks. We looked at the second part of the 10 unleadership things that we picked up on the week before. To recap, we covered the findings from Brian Dodd's book titled Mighty, 7 skills you need to move from pandemic to progress. And we addressed the first 5 points 2 weeks ago and covered the final 5 points last week. And those 5 points were noted as follows. The sixth of the 10 is immaturity. You are not mentally or emotionally ready for leadership. The seventh is selfish. You want all the attention. The eighth is unbalanced. You lack the fundamentals needed to lead. The ninth is bad attitude. Attitude is a choice. It also determines your altitude. You have a low leadership ceiling. And the 10th is undisciplined, which is the pain of discipline is always less than the pain of regret. And as per the previous week, Kevin, I referenced a mix of other independent articles and reports when reviewing each of this was just to get a bit of an unbiased view to that of the actual author as well. And yeah, lovely that we rephrased it unleadership.
Yeah, so guys, go and check it out. It's a really fascinating conversation of what leadership really shouldn't do, and to have. But Craig, so what do we have in store for today's conversation?
Okay, Kevin, I want to shift the conversation from unleadership to that of employees and what it is that actually motivates their performance, which obviously good leadership is one of the motivators there. And I want to reference a really comprehensive report that I came across on McKinsey.com, which is compiled by the People and Organizational Performance Practice. The report is titled, What Employees Say Matters Most to Motivate Performance. The report covers findings from a survey of over 1,000 employees and provides a data-backed view of what actually motivates employees to perform. The report was published in August this year, so again, very current findings, and was produced by co-author contributors, namely Asmus Kom, Brooke Weddle, Donna Mayor, Katrina Wagner, and Vivian Bro. And Kevin, I want to start the conversation just by quoting a few lines from the first few paragraphs, the first few opening paragraphs to set some context. And some of these lines read as follows. The past few years have been a confounding time in performance management. Disruptions of long-standing workplace norms have led many employees to rethink the expectation of employees regarding remote work, employee burnout, and work-life balance. Compounding these challenges, an inflationary economy and a slower hiring market have put pressure on employees to do more with the talent they already have. An important point that comes out after that particular opening segment is that organizations have responded to this volatility by actually seeking new formulas to motivate their talent, including rethinking the approaches to performance management. And that's really something that's definitely well worth investigating to see how it's actually applied to the South African context as well. But as organizations are defining those changes to performance management, it's really difficult to understand what will actually bring about the greatest ROI. And leaders are often forced to rely on their anecdotal case studies and success stories from others' experience to help boost the employee morale, their motivation to perform. And there's a host of books and articles out there that one can always reference to find some of those qualitative insights, to establish and understand what employees say most inspires and motivates them.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting conversation, Craig, because when you look at what employees say matters most, and very often, okay, I mustn't make a generalization, but it's very often the case that employers don't listen to their employees, and you kind of go, it's not like it almost in some and certain business units. Yeah, you'll find that it's almost like a stuck record, like it's been this narrative, and you kind of go, why is no one paying attention to this? Like, it's not, and that in itself creates such despondency in the morale of the environment. Long term, it's cancerous.
Yeah, Kevin, what's great is the study that McKinsey conducted here is really actually addressing those very points that you speak about, and the report gives a great explanation on the methodologies and the key questions asked, and I sort of just want to go through 4 points that talk about the approach that they use. So firstly, late 2023 and early 24, McKinsey ran this anonymous global survey in 11 countries across multiple continents, and they had 1,200 respondents. So yeah, deep survey. They looked at organizations with staff between 1,000 to 100,000 employees, and again across various positions in the organizations, including non-management, frontline management, middle management, and then obviously top management and exec levels. And the respondents' industries were quite broad: automotive, technology, industrial manufacturing, energy, power, defense, semiconductors. Actually quite important industries to where the world is in this particular moment in time. And the survey asked respondents to rank their level of agreements with 54 statements related predominantly to performance management, including the following: my individual performance goals are clearly linked to my company's and or my team's goals. The way my company conducts performance reviews motivates me to perform better, and my rating reflects my achievements of my individual performance goals. So there are 3 of the questions referenced there out of those 54.
Craig, so what is the focus of the report? Because it's obviously that's something. There's a point of what they really want to be focusing on.
Yeah, absolutely, Kevin. So the report obviously focuses heavily on performance management, and as we go into the sort of the 5 key themes of the report, I just quickly want to discuss the what and how of performance management, and starting with the what, which we learned from Investopedia. The what of performance management is a tool that helps managers monitor and evaluate employees' work. The goal of performance management is to create an environment where people can actually perform to their best of their abilities and in alignment with those organizational goals. Performance management is widely used both in private and public sectors, Kevin. And then moving to the how of performance management, we learned the following from another McKinsey article. The how isn't generic leadership habits or a company's values, but take note, it's actually key skills and behaviors that enable the achievements of performance objectives and creates that desired organizational culture, Kevin. So going back to the report, we note those 5 points in the approach to perfecting performance management, and these are noted as follows. Point 1, as organizations consider the approaches across the 4 performance management pillars, these being goal setting, performance reviews, ongoing feedback, and rewards, a consistent and clearly articulated performance management framework always wins the day. Point 2 is that goal setting has impact when goals are measured and clearly linked to company priorities. Point 3 is that performance reviews with skilled managers, take note, skilled managers, are crucial to employee performance. Point 4 is investment in manager training to foster meaningful development discussions pay dividends, and that links quite nicely to point 3 because it talks about skilled managers. And then point 4, leans into the rewards proposition, where rewards that include non-financial incentives provide a boost to employees, Kevin.
Great, and I think that's important because you have that intrinsic motivators and you have extrinsic motivators, and you figuring out what that is and how to do that well to get your team on board is so essential for the success of what that type of performance is going to bring out in any case. But I mean, with the what and the how defined, what can you share about the findings?
Yeah, Kevin, so let's look at those 5 points that we've just covered here, starting with point 1. Which again is, as organizations consider the approaches across the 4 performance management pillars, those being goal setting, performance reviews, ongoing feedback, and rewards, we note that a consistent and clearly articulated performance management framework always wins the day. And in a bit more detail, it says that most rewards often resonate from results-based performance management goals and metrics. And these are in favor of measures that actually balance what employees achieved with how they achieve it. So a really nice movement from very coded, process-oriented, metrics-driven performance management to performance management that brings in the emotive employee connection. And it's a rationale that partly is to make employees feel that they're actually assessed in a more holistic way, not just a tick box in a online process. And really, it's about considering all of those external factors that contribute to their ability to deliver on those results. But the holistic approach also measures how well employees have adhered to company culture, norms, and leadership expectations. And often there's a big gap in that in the traditional performance management review process. The survey results revealed that respondents did not view results-based assessments particularly negatively. However, what worked less well were systems without clear and easily understood structures. And the respondents view those as significantly less motivating and unfair, whereas when building the overall frameworks for performance management, consistency and simplicity, definitely that's the ones that they leaned into, and they saw much higher levels of achievements in that regard. And when you approach each of the elements of performance management separately, there's definitely much lower levels of intent to perform. But when you combine the 4 pillars and they work together, they had a much higher impact of ROI on respondents, and approaches with coherent, connected frameworks across the goal-setting performance reviews, across the feedback mechanisms, across the loyalty and rewards, correlated with the highest motivation for any of the teams, Kevin.
Greg, and I love what I do love about the that it's part of its finding, it's part of the motivation, and part of the information it's sharing is very data driven. And from the work that I do with the LSP program, we know how important, especially with large organizations, how to look at data and understand what the data story is.
Yes.
When you get to that point, you kind of go, okay, cool, this is actually what the data is telling us. How do we utilize or scrutinize it to the degree to understand what the data, how we can inform what we do next?
And Kevin, definitely what it's done there is it's shown you that the balance of intrinsics and extrinsics working together really are bringing the best measures and the best performance out at the end of the day. Yeah. But then, moving to the second point here, which is goal setting has impact when goals are measurable and clearly linked to company priorities. And we know that goal setting has for a long time been accepted as quite a critical tool for performance management and improving performance. The report notes that 72% of respondents noted this as a strong motivator. However, the what and the how of setting those goals are definitely less understood, and I think that's why I talk to the point of more skilled managers and a lot more learning and development in that space. But the question that it asks is actually what makes an effective goal. And the survey revealed that employees felt more motivated when their performance goals included, again, a mix of both individual and team level goals, and when their goals were clearly linked to their company's goals. Respondents also felt, at least reported, feeling more motivated by goals that felt measurable. So again, it's not just something that's a tick box on a piece of paper in an online format. It's something that, through your performance and delivery, you can actually, and your behaviors, obviously, they actually are things that are tangible and feel measurable. The survey suggests that it's just as important as the content of a goal is the process by which it is set. And here employees tended to be more motivated and perceive the performance management approach as fair when they were actually in the process of the goals and updating throughout the year to align with the team and organizational goals. So more direct connection, more face-to-face alignment, more input from the individuals and employees to then see how they're tracking in line with the goals of the performance. But also, some of those goals may well be changing during the year, and it's about calibrating and bringing those together again, Kevin. So the findings there suggest highest return on investment when managers actually spend time throughout the year counseling their staff and employees on updates to align the goals with the current business priorities, and then actually articulate those connections between the business priorities, the team goals, and then the individual goals, Kevin.
Okay, but just from a human being perspective, one of the things that we know about humans is we love structure and strategy, right? When you formulate a wonderful goal-setting process, and I've done this with a team before, quite a large team, around just a simple grow model,
Yes.
Kind of looking at what the goal is, what's the reality, what's the opportunity, and what's the way forward. And you work through that, and you give them just a basic structure. Even that, at a basic structured level like that, really helps them kind of relate back to, well, what is required of me to reach this goal? Because it's a structure, and in that structure, you figure out what that strategy is for you individually. It's a really good way of helping motivate teams in a very constructive way. I love that.
And it's again to ensure the consistency of aligning everyone, but bringing the human connection back to understanding the impact of their role, the team's role, and the organization.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Perfect. Looking at that point 3, which is performance reviews with skilled managers are crucial to employee performance. And I really like this point, Kevin. So as employees meet the evolving employee expectations, many have rethought the approaches to performance reviews by focusing on changes to the ratings, which is a good thing. And some organizations have actually shifted from these numerical scales, for instance, rate on a scale of 1 to 5, to more word-based systems, which again, an example would be from underperforming to exceeding expectations. So the words are bringing some of the emotive connection back into play. And in some instances, they've actually done away with ratings entirely, and it becomes very much a conversational understanding of performance in that regard. So the different rating scales definitely yielded negligible differences in how much motivation employees reported. However, important to note, there was no significant difference between receiving no ratings and receiving a rating on a 2-point scale or a 3 or 5-point scale. Instead, what was interesting here is respondents actually suggested employees may be overemphasizing the rating frameworks and overlooking the critical aspects of how ratings are given. And a really good takeout here is the survey indicated that employees were significantly more motivated by performance reviews when they actually were offered by a skilled manager and reflected the individual's achievements of a performance goal. So again, the skilled manager really understands the behavior and efficacy of that individual in their role at any one point in time, and understands how to correlate that back to the team's performance and to the organization's performance. And it brings a very different conversation because it's not just a tick box of rating scale again. And this was especially true when managers were directly involved in setting of the goals with the teams, and when they were well informed, they were able to articulate the right response and the right engagement with the employees at performance time.
Craig, what's interesting is I've had a number of conversations around the miscommunication or the ambiguity of what that rating scale looks like. And many line managers tell you, a 3 out of 5, for example, is the fact that you're present and you're doing your job. And you kind of go, for you to get more than that, you need to be really overexerting. And from the person receiving that feedback, they're kind of going, what do you mean? I'm doing so much. And so that sometimes that rating scale is miscommunicated. And I'm assuming that it's left a little bit vague and ambiguous, because if they had to go into absolute detail about it, it would become far more complex in how you would rate it. But it's necessary to rate.
It is, but if you understand the behaviors and performance relative to each of the goals, it makes the conversation fundamentally different.
Yeah.
Because when you know the scope, the role definition, and the actions required at this end of the spectrum to that end of the spectrum across all of your jobbing functions in the day, week, and year, then the conversation is fundamentally different. It's not just a click box exercise. It's a conversation around effective you've been or ineffective you've been.
Absolutely, yeah.
Kevin, moving to point 4, which is, and again, as I mentioned earlier, this is a great segue into the previous points around skilled managers. So investments in manager training to foster meaningful development discussions pay dividends. And here the survey data showed a big difference in the ongoing development discussions outside the review cycle. And again, for me, this is a really important point. Don't just keep the conversations for when the review cycles are. On a continuous basis, have the conversations with the team, lead effectively, and help them find the direction of the organization. What we noted here is only 21% of respondents who had no development conversations felt motivated by their company's performance management, compared with 77% of employees who received ongoing feedback. And that there is the role for the management layer, Kevin. So when it comes to providing feedback, manager training is absolutely critical. Nearly 25% of survey respondents said that their managers' feedback providers did not have sufficient skills or capabilities to conduct their performance reviews. Now, that's a really big concern for many companies, particularly if you're looking at the survey picked up from 1,000 to 100,000 staff. How many staff are being compromised by ineffective managers in this particular process? So they're really sitting there not getting any direction on their career growth and enablement. At some of the large companies that they looked at with 10,000 to 50,000 employees, 34% of the respondents noted this lack of skills. Large companies in particular could designate more power and resources to middle managers, traditionally the most passionate and capable coaches within an organization. And yeah, I think we need to revisit that whole middle management layer, Kevin, because they are fundamentally important. And really it's a case of how can employers empower managers without creating excessive workloads? Because as we know, both managers and employees often find the process of providing and receiving feedback not only challenging, but definitely really time consuming. And that's why you often see it's just defaulted to once or twice a year, as opposed to this continuous monthly kind of cycle.
Yeah, Craig, I think what's really stands out to me is that 25% of the surveys, or 25% of the surveys respondents said that the manager are not sufficiently skilled for the capabilities. And if you're running an organization like that, to that size, you're kind of going, well, that's a big chunk of people that really are not looked after or potentially getting the kind of feedback they need. And that can affect various areas in business in itself. So to hear it like that is quite a concern.
Absolutely.
You're doing to make sure that people know how they are rating and supporting their own staff and their own team members.
And again, when you extrapolate it up into organizations of that size, the magnitude of misalignment and ineffective career guidance is just significant, really is.
Yeah.
Moving on to point 5, which is rewards that include financial incentives provide a boost. And I think this may well change from market to market, country to country. Some markets like South Africa, I think financial incentives are really something that are more desirable to non-financial, particularly looking at the economic structures of workforces and things like that. That said, money matters, but the survey also suggests that as work-life balance expectations continue to shift and become a priority, non-financial rewards like opportunities for upskilling, professional development, do play an increasingly important role in some of these performance management strategies, Kevin. And what's interesting here is that the survey showed a strong relationship between employees' use of both financial and non-financial rewards, and employees' expectations and perceptions of their personal motivation and personal improvement shifted in the combination of those two parameters. The survey also noted on a unique distinction, Kevin, where employees were more likely to perceive that the organization's performance management systems were improving company performance overall when some of these non-financial rewards were used and implemented. Taken together, though, the findings suggest that non-financial rewards can serve as a critical booster for the success of that cohesive performance management system, and obviously team dynamic, and then better business improvement. What was interesting to note here is that some of the previous research McKinsey did in this area found that non-financial incentives really should appeal to 5 sources of meaning, and I like these sources. Firstly is society, secondly client, third company, fourth team, and fifth self. And these findings align with the social science research that looks that non-financial incentives could actually include immediate manager's praise, a step-up opportunity to lead a high-profile project, greater autonomy in the team, in the organization, or more workplace flexibility, Kevin.
Craig, what's interesting, just like a non-financial idea that, and I've heard it before, and I'm currently in an environment where that conversation came up. And one of the things they were saying is, how about doing something that people just simply don't expect?
Yeah.
And they literally referring to, what if we gave people vouchers for food, or Woolworths vouchers, for example? The second one would be, what if we had someone like a masseuse come into the environment for the day, and you reward, teams by, and I'm thinking a sales team right now, but, reward people with massages as they go throughout the day. So the non-financial reward incentives provide what it does do. It interjects and it surprises people, and it's almost like a gift, right? So
I like that, because there's an opportunity to increase the frequency of non-financial incentives, whereas you may have your quarterly or biannual financial incentive programs. In fact, most companies these days are just defaulting to annual. But definitely the surprise factor of the inclusion on a more frequent basis of non-financial incentives really is a very positive attribute in this particular regard.
So, Greg, what are the final comments from the report?
Yeah, Kevin, there's a lovely closing statement that reiterates the points we've covered, but it really summarizes it in quite a succinct and distinct way. And let me read that here. Economic volatility and shifting workplace norms have sparked many employees' renewed interest in creating the right performance management formula. The survey suggests that cohesive overall design and effective executions are the most important focus points. As organizations consider the approaches across those 4 performance management pillars, which again is goal setting, performance reviews, ongoing feedback, and rewards, we urge them to pay close attention to the what and the how to motivate and inspire employees.
I love that, Greg. And as I think most organizations don't take this serious enough. So the fact that they've done, a study like this exists really highlights the importance of, what that performance management could look like, and what are the key attributes and the key motivators that, could motivate teams forward. So I think it's an absolute necessary conversation. And I'm like, to close off today's, I know that we quickly running out of time here, but to close today's conversation, the quote for today around what employees say matters most to motivate performance is, true motivation comes when employees feel heard, valued, and connected to a purpose greater than themselves. What they say and how they are supported can ignite performance beyond expectations. And that's
nice. That's nice.
Brilliant, Craig. So, guys, if you want to check it out, we've been discussing what the lack of leadership is in the last two sessions. But today we're looking at what employees say matters most. Go and check it out on the Lunchtime Series, all your major podcast channels. And please remember to like, share, and catch me and Craig right here, every single Wednesday. No, everything goes through. Like I even get it. We're so
Thursday, Kevin. Yeah.
Go Wednesday, Thursday, guys, and please like and share, and we will see you next week. Craig, thank you for today, and I'll catch up.
Have a great rest of the week. Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks, Craig. Cheers. Bye.